gave the letter to Megabazus, who, after reading it, took guides from Thrace and led his army to Paeonia. When the Paeonians learned that the Persians were coming against them, they gathered together and marched away to the sea, thinking that the Persians would attempt to attack them by that way. So the Paeonians were ready to withstand the onset of Megabazus' army, but the Persians, learning that the Paeonians had gathered their forces and were guarding the coast route into their country, got guides and marched instead by the highland road. They accordingly took the Paeonians unaware and won entrance into their cities, which were left without men, and finding these empty at their attack, they easily gained them. The Paeonians, learning that their towns had been taken, straightway disbanded, each going his own way, and surrendered themselves to the Persians. Thus of the Paeonians the Syrio-Paeones and Paeopli, and all who lived as far as the Prasiad Lake, were taken away from their homes and led into Asia. But those near the Pangaean mountains and the country of the Dobares, and the Agrianes, and the Adomanti, and the Prasiad Lake itself were never subdued at all by Megabazus. He did in fact try to take the lake dwellers, and did so, in the following manner. There is set in the midst of the lake a platform made fast on tall piles, to which one bridge gives a narrow passage from the land. In olden times all the people working together set the piles which support the platform there, but they later developed another method of setting them. The men bring the piles from a mountain called Orbelus, and every man plants 3 for each of the 3 women that he weds. Each man has both a hut on the platform and a trap door in the platform leading down into the lake. They make a cord fast to the feet of their little children out of fear that they will fall into the water. They give fish as fodder to their horses and beasts of burden, and there is such an abundance of fish that a man can open his trap door, let down an empty basket by a line into the lake, and draw it up after a short time full of fish. There are 2 kinds of these, some called paprices and some tilones. So those of the Paeonians who had been captured were taken into Asia. Then Megabazus, having made the Paeonians captive, sent as messengers into Macedonia the 7 Persians who, after himself, were the most honorable in his army. These were sent to Amyntas to demand earth and water for Darius the king. Now there is a very straight way from the Prasiad Lake to Macedonia. First there is, near the lake, that mine from which Alexander later drew a daily revenue of a talent of silver, and when a person has passed the mine, he need only cross the mountain called Disorum to be in Macedonia. The Persians who had been sent as envoys came to Amyntas and demanded earth and water for Darius the king. He readily gave to them what they asked, and invited them to be his guests, preparing a dinner of great splendor and receiving them hospitably. After dinner the Persians said to Amyntas as they sat drinking together, "Macedonian, our host, it is our custom in Persia to bring in also the concubines and wedded wives to sit by the men after the giving of any great banquet. We ask you, then, since you have received us heartily, are entertaining us nobly, and are giving Darius our king earth and water, to follow our custom." To this Amyntas replied, "We have no such custom, Persians. Among us men and women sit apart. But since you are our masters and are making this request, it shall be as you desire." With that Amyntas sent for the women. Upon being called, the women entered and sat down in a row opposite the Persians. Then the Persians, seeing beautiful women before them, spoke to Amyntas and said that there was no sense in what he had done. It would be better if the women had never come at all, than that they should come and not sit beside the men, but sit opposite them to torment their eyes. Amyntas, now feeling compelled to do so, bade the women sit beside them. When the women had done as they were bidden, the Persians, flushed as they were with excess of wine, at once laid hands on the women's breasts, and one or another tried to kiss them. This Amyntas saw, but held his peace despite his anger, because he greatly feared the Persians. Amyntas' son Alexander, however, because of his youth and ignorance of ill deeds, could not bear it longer, and said to Amyntas in great wrath, "My father, do as your age demands. leave us and take your rest. Do not continue drinking. I will stay here and give our guests all that is needful." At this Amyntas saw that Alexander had some wild deed in mind, and said, "My son, you are angered, and if I guess your meaning correctly, you are sending me away so that you may do some violent deed. I, for my part, for fear that you will bring about our undoing, entreat you not to act rashly against these men, but to bear patiently the sight of what they do. If you want me to leave, to that I consent." When Amyntas made this request and had gone his way, Alexander said to the Persians, "Sirs, you have full freedom to deal with these women, and may have intercourse with all or any of them. As to that, you may make your own decision. But now, since the hour of your rest is drawing near, and I see that you are all completely drunk, allow these women to depart and wash, if this is your desire. When they have washed, wait for them to come to you again." When he had said this, and the Persians had given their consent, he sent the women out and away to their apartments. Alexander then took as many beardless men as there were women, dressed them in the women's clothes, and gave them daggers. These he brought in, and said to the Persians, "I believe, men of Persia, that you have feasted to your heart's content. All that we had, and all besides that we could find to give you, has been set before you, and now we make you a free gift of our best and most valued possession, our own mothers and sisters. Be aware that in so doing we are giving you all the honor that you deserve, and tell your king who sent you how his Greek viceroy of Macedonia has received you hospitably, providing food and bedfellows." With that, Alexander seated each of his Macedonians next to a Persian, as though they were women. And when the Persians began to lay hands on them, they were killed by the Macedonians. This was the way in which they perished, they and all their retinue. Carriages too had come with them, and servants, and all the great train they had. The Macedonians made away with all that, as well as with all the envoys themselves. No long time afterwards the Persians made a great search for these men, but Alexander had cunning enough to put an end to it by the gift of a great sum, and his own sister Gygaea to Bubares, a Persian and the general of those who were looking for the slain men. It was in this way, then, that the death of these Persians was kept silent. Now that these descendants of Perdiccas are Greeks, as they themselves say, I myself chance to know, and will prove it, in the later part of my history. Furthermore, the Hellenodici who managed the contest at Olympia determined that it is so, for when Alexander chose to contend and entered the lists for that purpose, the Greeks who were to run against him wanted to bar him from the race, saying that the contest should be for Greeks and not for foreigners. Alexander, however, proving himself to be an Argive, was judged to be a Greek. He accordingly competed in the furlong race and tied step for first place. This, then, is approximately what happened. Megabazus, bringing with him the Paeonians, came to the Hellespont, and after crossing it from there he came to Sardis. Histius, the Milesian, was by this time fortifying the place which he had asked of Darius as his reward for guarding the bridge, a place called Mercenus, by the river Strymon. Megabazus discovered what he was doing, and upon his arrival at Sardis with the Paeonians, he said to Darius, "Sire, what is this that you have done? You have permitted a clever and cunning Greek to build a city in Thrace, where there are abundant forests for shipbuilding, much wood for oars, mines of silver, and many people both Greek and foreign dwelling around, who, when they have a champion to lead them, will carry out all his orders by day or by night. Stop this man, then, from doing these things, so that you will not be entangled in a war with your own subjects, but use gentle means to do so. When you have him in your grasp, see to it that he never returns to Hellas." Megabazus easily persuaded Darius, who believed that his vision of the future was correct. Presently the king sent a message to Mercenus, which read as follows: "Histius, these are the words of Darius the king. My thoughts can show me no man who is more devoted to me and my affairs. Not words but deeds have proven this to me. Now, therefore, let nothing prevent you from coming to me, so that I may inform you of certain great purposes which I have in mind." Trusting these words, and proud, moreover, that he would be